This video is going to be a film study focus on the Detroit Lions offensive concepts that were utilized, particularly in the first half of their 40-34 win over the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football, pushing Detroit's record to 14-2, heading into the Week 18 showdown against the Minnesota Vikings. Watching Ben Johnson's offense either live or the All-22/End Zone Angle film, it's a challenge. And at this point, I've seen enough film through 2+ seasons to where I don't fall into the trap. And here's the trap that I'm going to describe. The first time Ben Johnson shows something, a formation, a motion, a play, it's tempting to say, okay, that he's just revealed his hand to us. I think oftentimes he's one of those offensive coordinators that, and there's many across the league, don't get me wrong, but I get the pleasure of watching Ben Johnson coordinate the Detroit Lions offense and Todd Monken run the Baltimore Ravens offense. Ben Johnson's one of those guys that shows something, and it's not to reveal his hand the first time he shows it, or even the second. Oftentimes, he's really setting up the third play for later on in a drive, later on in a game, or even maybe the next time he sees that team. I got, I think, 14 plays queued up here, and what I really want to show is the 3 near the end that are just looking at things from such a different angle, whether it's higher frequency, whether it's coming out of left field, a different way to look at things. Ben Johnson is just a different kind of cat when it comes to calling plays, at the NFL level, and the San Francisco 49ers found out once again. One thing that I think is interesting, reflecting back on the NFC Championship game last year, the 49ers outscored Detroit, I think 27-7 in that game, coming from behind to erase and overcome that 17-point deficit. Interestingly enough, Ben Johnson and Jared Goff's offense outscored the 49ers 27-7 on Monday Night Football to push their record to 14-2. So we're going to move forward here, skipping multiple plays. Like I said, I think I've got 14 or 15 plays queued up. This is a 3rd and 2 on the first possession, and it's 11 personnel. You've got St. Brown in a tight alignment down here to the bottom side. Bosa is going to just jack up Sam Laporta. So it kind of influences Gibbs to take this run concept away from perhaps its intended path. I think the intended path is downhill off of these double teams. So you've got essentially duo blocks here. Laporta trying to help out or trying to deal with Bosa and possibly allow St. Brown to help out. There's just really nothing they can do there. Bosa closes down. 3rd and 2 isn't an anomalous play call to run the football. I just think that the way that Ben Johnson operates sometimes, utilizing 11 personnel in what functions as an almost obvious run situation, is pretty unique. And he's asking a tight end, Laporta, and a wide receiver, St. Brown, to deal with Bosa. They clearly did not on that play, but it's about what they ask their players to do, and I think that's one of the reasons why Brad Holmes has said we draft specific guys with specific profiles, essentially players who will not be selfish and will block for other guys. Still on the first possession here, and I love this play for a lot of reasons. When you get the end zone angle, you'll see just the way that they handle combo blocks in Detroit is just really effective. Everyone tries to do it this way, don't get me wrong. They try to keep their eyes up when they're comboing. In this case, it's Laporta and Decker comboing the D end, and they're going to work up to Fred Warner, the superstar inside linebacker for the 49ers. It's an outside zone follow. So Brock Wright's going to motion across. He actually kind of loops to the outside. And when I say outside zone follow, what I mean is it's going with the motion, and Gibbs takes it off tackle. Everyone blocks in Detroit. You know this as a fan, if you're, who's watching this at this point other than Detroit Lions fans. I know this from the sheer amount of film that I watch. I don't think a lot of people do. I think it's kind of a hidden thing. I never hear it talked about. I rarely hear it talked about. Let me rephrase that. On broadcast television, when the Lions play someone, yes, they'll talk about the offensive line, how effective they are, but these are the guys, and the wide receivers as well, that just block their ass off for everyone else and really cause problems for pretty much every defense that they go against. The offense was a rock on Monday night. Defense clearly struggled with the 49ers, regardless of who played for San Francisco. The offense was a rock, even though I felt like they were dealing with pressure, particularly early, and really wasted that 3rd possession going forward on the 4th and 3. This is a 2-gap bubble on the same play from the end zone angle. This is the outside zone follow, And check out what we've got here. You've got a combo by Decker and Laporta, and as they get this accomplished, look at Decker's eyes and Laporta's eyes. They're both looking at Warner, trying to figure out who should peel off and go get him. Additional to that, Tim Patrick has closed off a defensive back. Ragnow has closed off the backside nickel defender, I believe, who was set to the field. Decker and Laporta both go to deal with Warner. Fortunately, the defensive end can't peel off and make the tackle. It's a 21-yard gain for Gibbs. End zone angle is just a lot of fun to watch. Huge gap there. Warner understands, though, the speed that Gibbs offers, number one. Number two, the probable point of impact or where Gibbs was intended to attack in terms of a gap. And so he didn't fill that lane, kind of allowed Decker and Laporta to work to him late, and Gibbs to fold over the top for a huge gain. Still first possession, classic Ben Johnson Detroit Lions concept, where you have an in-breaking route in the form of Tim Patrick, and then from the opposite side of the field, a landmark route, if you ask me, whereby sometimes the player will sit this route down on the hash, sometimes sit it down between the top of the numbers and the hash. We're talking about Laporta. Additional to that, the final part of this, what I would say is a classic Ben Johnson concept, is the running back, Craig Reynolds, going out into the flats. It's a 2nd and 15 after a penalty on the Lions, and Goff gets all the way back over here to Reynolds. Ends up being a 25-yard gain. Watch, I think you'll get the end zone angle here in a moment. Watch Goff where he looks first. This is so quick. I think it's a super skill for him. And sometimes, in my opinion, he may just be looking to this side to hold the defense, which is just brilliant quarterbacking, if you ask me. But the read, he does give a slight pump fake up here, possibly to St. Brown. The read would be 2 and 3, I believe, with 1 being St. Brown up to the top side. Comes back to 2 and 3. Again, you've got Patrick on the in-breaking route, Laporta kind of sitting down, and then Reynolds' route, which you can barely see the top of his helmet here, is just to expand the width and increase the conflict, I should say, on the nickel defender / strong safety. Too much space for him to cover. Reynolds gets out of the right flats for a huge gain. Like I said, first possession after the 49ers had went down and really shredded Detroit's defense on their first drive. Still first possession, a jumbo 12, and this is a setup, and this is kind of what I was talking about in the lead-in. So you do have 2 eligible offensive linemen reporting extra. So you've got 7 offensive linemen on the field here in the form of the starting offensive line, and then Mahogany and Skipper, I believe both reported eligible on the play. It's a duo concept. Jefferson is in the game. I like the timing for when Ben Johnson does this. So this is not Gibbs. I'm not saying Gibbs can't run this concept, but this is a safe run concept. Why? Because you've got 3 double teams, and it's 6 offensive linemen executing those double teams. Point number 1. Point number 2, Jameson Williams is going to motion across. Sewell is going to handle Bosa, and then Williams is going to insert to the backside, presumably to go get the strong safety who's rolled up. And it kind of goes for a triple or a home run, maybe. I just think it's a smart play call for the moment. You don't have David Montgomery. He's out for a while. Hopefully he comes back sooner than expected. Gibbs is off the field for whatever reason here, probably because he had been involved in so many run concepts early. So we get not 6, but 7 offensive linemen on the field. Call a safe run play duo that we really can't mess up. And in this case, Jefferson almost gets in the end zone. It's an 8-yard gain. I covered this in the video that I put out on Jameson Williams on Tuesday. You're welcome to check that out. I'll link it up here at some point if you'd like to look at it. It basically just examines his impact against the 49ers in the Monday Night Football game, kind of hearkening back to a couple of plays from the NFC Championship loss where he also had 2 touchdowns. This is split back sweep. Normally it would be to Gibbs in the location that he's in with a cut block by the H-back / tight end who's in a 3-point stance. In this case, there is no defensive end to cut, so Brock Wright loops out to the outside, and Gibbs is operating as bait. He's going opposite of the flow. We know at this point it's the touchdown on a sweep, wide receiver sweep, but it's the same split back scheme that Ben Johnson has run in short yardage situations and goal line moments for the better part of 2.5 years. First time I saw it, I think, was week 1, 2022. I believe DeAndre Swift scored on a 4th and 1 down at home, obviously in the right side end zone from the broadcast view against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Kansas City Chiefs also used that same concept. I think Ben Johnson just approaches things from a different perspective, a different background, maybe. I know he did play quarterback in college, didn't have that successful a career, but worked his way up the coaching ranks. I firmly believe that he has a set of plays that he can use in pretty much any situation. So what I mean by that is concepts that he can rely on, whether it's short yardage situation, 3rd and 12. I'm going to show you the hook and lateral here in a moment. Reverses, unfortunately, the reverse pass didn't work out well on Monday night against the 49ers, but it's just brilliant, the call. Jameson Williams ran a reverse for a touchdown in the NFC Championship game in the first half, and so they were going to run a reverse pass with him, apparently, in this game on Monday Night Football. It ended up being a tackle for loss, so not every play call is going to work out, clearly. Second possession, and this is just a really cool way to utilize Penei Sewell. I suspect that it's called at the line based on the alignment that you get, but it's 11 personnel. So you got 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end who's into the boundary. So what that does is it controls where the 3 technique is. And this is important because it allows the guard, Zeitler, to step to the 3 technique, Sewell to fold underneath. Essentially, it's a pin-pull zone concept. So there's zoning, a typical zone on the front side, and then pin and pull Sewell up to the boundary side inside linebacker, such that Gibbs is able to have a cutback lane, and you can see he takes it right downhill behind Sewell for a 6-yard gain. It's a 2nd and 9. Same play. Here's the angle that I'm talking about. Because it's 11 personnel and you've got the tight end here, there's going to be a 9 technique, outside shade defensive end. Additional to that, there's going to be a 3 technique, or at least a guy in the B gap. If this player's helmet was here, you'd have a 2-gap bubble. 1, 2. You'd have a huge lane just by alignment. So they're going to avoid that, they being the 49ers defense. What that allows is, or it sets up, I should say, perfect angles for Zeitler, a little bit slow out of his stance, and then Sewell to fold or pull underneath of that, try to go get the boundary side inside linebacker. He kind of whiffs on his block there. I'm not sure what happens with the video. My apologies. Ends up being a 6-yard gain for Gibbs on the play. Guess you call it zone log. Just a pin pull concept, really. 12 personnel, quick pitch to the field on a 1st and 10, still second possession, like I said. And this is rarely seen from Ben Johnson. It's interesting to me that we're in week 17 and we get something new like this. Meaning as soon as Goff gets the ball, it's not a toss play because he opens to the side where he pitches it. Meaning Goff's chest and eyes and face mask immediately open here. That's pitch. If you do it the other way, if he catches the ball and reverse pivots, so his chest, his face, and his eyes and face mask would end up here first, going counterclockwise, that is a toss play. Toss play is reverse pivot. Pitch is opening to it. In any case, it's a pitch concept, and again, a double team at the point of attack, allowing Gibbs to cut underneath. You've got a 7-yard gain, still on the second possession. Like I said, there's a couple of plays I'd like to get to more so than others. This one is a setup, and I'm going to spend a significant amount of time on this play. Look at the split that you've got between Decker and the left guard Glasgow. I remember seeing this during the game and thinking, what is that? And I didn't even note it because I was confused by it. Like I said in the lead-in, it's a challenge to document, analyze, evaluate what Ben Johnson does because he just does so much, and the players execute all of it. Additional to that, you do have the pin pull happening again with Zeitler, and then Sewell logging up, and that kind of opens up the cutback for Gibbs once again. So the play started to the left, and then he winds it back to the right, ends up being 15 yards. That happens really in an instant. I will give the end zone angle so you can see the split that I'm talking about. Split meaning how wide the tackle lined up compared to the guard. Normal splits are illustrated by the space between those offensive linemen. And look at this. It looks like something from Texas Tech when Mike Leach was there. And this is set up because I'm going to show you plays from the third possession and then from the eighth possession where they give the same exact look pre-snap. And then that's when Ben Johnson was trading Sewell over to fit into this space, really manipulating the 49ers. Why? Why do that? Why do it in this order? Well, I think the first time you did this was Skipper reporting eligible. Next to Sewell, you're eliciting the 3 technique, meaning the B-gap defender is going to be over here, and the 9 technique Bosa is going to be widened up. Additional, obviously, you want to avoid Bosa to a certain degree. He's extremely talented. Running away from him, good idea. Whoever the defenders are on the other side, probably not as talented, even though Bosa is dealing with injuries. I thought he was giving Sewell problems in pass pro a little bit. Look at the lane that is opened up here. Part of it is the 49ers didn't identify this big gap in here, so the nose tackle stunts across the center's face and really opens up a huge amount of space between those 2 defensive linemen. This is an inside linebacker that Glasgow is dealing with. Just too much room when you have a lead blocker in the form of Brock Wright and a pulling tackle in the form of Penei Sewell. 15 yards. I know I've spent a long time talking about this concept. It's very rare to see a split like that at the NFL level, really at any level, to be honest with you. So we saw it again on the third possession in the same manner, except now it's Jumbo 13. So this is Skipper, and that's Brock Wright, and that's Laporta. So 3 tight ends on the field, and you can see that Sewell's hand is not in the ground, like Glasgow and Zeitler's hands are in the ground, or Skipper. So what that does is, and there's a reason for that, Sewell can't put his hand in the ground. Let's run this back a couple of times. When you see the offensive linemen put their hand down, Zeitler, Skipper, Glasgow. Zeitler, Skipper, Glasgow. Decker's hand is not down. He can't trade if his hand is down. If your hand is down and you're closed off, you're unable to trade. So, like, for example, as this occurs, Zeitler could not trade because he's closed off to his outside. Skipper, who reported eligible, is on the line with his hand down outside of him. So you can't trade to the opposite side, at least to my knowledge, the level of football that I coached at. What does it accomplish? Well, number one, they've forced the 49ers to defend Sewell and Skipper next to each other earlier, even though they ran away from him. And now they've completely just overloaded to the field and run, you guessed it, double team concepts. It is Craig Reynolds in the game. He does end up getting, I believe it's a 5-yard gain on a 3rd and 1 up the middle. A simple concept, essentially. When you get the end zone angle, you'll see just outnumbering the defense at the point of attack on a 3rd and 1, a short yardage situation. There's the space between Decker and Glasgow again. So when they've traded, Skipper had reported eligible. He is functionally the right tackle right now, but he's eligible. There is a receiver off the line to our right, off screen to our right. Look at the numbers advantage that you have with a 5-man surface. Guard, tackle, tight end, going against a defensive end, off screen here, sorry, you guys are losing the frame, linebacker, D-tackle. So either way you cut it, you got a 5-on-4. If you can deal with this Mike backer and this defensive tackle on the backside, you got a huge advantage. Well, guess how they accomplish it? Double teams at the point of attack. And in fact, it's the 2 tight ends, Laporta and Brock Wright, double team in the defensive end, trying to close him off there. Again, it's a 3rd and 1 on the 3rd possession. Unfortunately, Detroit doesn't score here. They go for it on the 4th and 3, the incomplete pass to Laporta, but they do get the conversion here. And Ben Johnson came back to it again later, really late in the game. I almost have, a couple of times I've compared Ben Johnson to like the way he calls a game to like a movie script where there's like 3 or 4 storylines happening at the same time. independent of one another, and then they kind of weave or get synthesized together in the last half hour of the movie. In this comparison, which might not be a great one, I recognize that, each storyline would be a personnel grouping slash the formations that emanate from it. And Ben Johnson's able to weave all those together. I almost feel like he's looked at the ending of the movie or the ending of the game and then built things, back mapped it from that. This is 8th possession. You see, same exact setup. Skipper has reported eligible, and now they've done this down into the boundary. 5-man surface, guard, tackle, tackle, 2 tight ends. Bosa is, in fact, down to the boundary. He stunts inside because they're anticipating the same duo slash double team concept, and it's effective. What he does, he disrupts the flow of it. The tight ends are unable to deal with him effectively. Laporta can't close him off. Reynolds is forced to bounce it to the outside. He does get, I believe, a 4-yard gain on a 1st and 10. End zone angle, the same play. I don't know, maybe you're not as enamored or interested in this as I am, but this is very anomalous. I mean, I've seen this with the best football coach that I've ever been around in my life. His offensive line uses really wide splits because they're a triple option team, under center, triple option, but they're not that wide. That's a gap that's big enough for Sewell to line up in, and you still have a normal split between him, Glasgow, and Decker. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Moving backwards a little bit here, we're on the 2nd possession again. I digressed a little bit. My apologies, talking about that wide split between the left guard and left tackle. It's just something that interests me, and I suspect with the way Ben Johnson does things, we'll probably see that trade of Sewell soon, and then a pass play that works off of it, whether it's to a tight end, a wide receiver, or even a 2nd or 3rd motion after Sewell trade. So again, we're back to the 2nd possession. This is a 1st and 10, and there is a penalty here, but I want to show this play and the next one because the 49ers, I thought, did a nice job of changing coverages often. This is a Tampa 2, in my opinion. You got a half-field safety, corner in the flats, your Mike linebacker, Warner, who's responsible for defending deep between the hashes, so I would call this a Tampa 2. Again, it's a 1st and 10 on the Lions' 2nd possession. Goff is kind of forced to move around a little bit, ends up checking it down to Laporta. There's a hold on Sewell, who I didn't think dealt with Bosa very well on 2 snaps in the first half, that is. So this is the 2 plays later, I should say. It's a 2nd and 23, and the 49ers have gone from a cover 2 to a cover 3 multiple times, and now this is the 3rd iteration of a coverage. It's really unique, if you ask. Well, I shouldn't say it's really unique. I think they're looking for 3 vertical, and that gets handled by the front side safety. This backside safety is kind of sitting down, and he's looking to rob an in cut by the X, and the front side safety is going to handle 3. As it works out, this just illustrates the danger of playing anything that's like man to the boundary when you've got Jahmyr Gibbs. I believe they're playing man on the backside X here with the backside boundary safety handling an in cut. So whatever their half-field call is, there's multiple half-field calls that you can utilize, whether it's Saban terminology, old school TCU terminology, and then straight man on the running back with the inside linebacker. Gibbs just offers such a wide array of routes, number one, and then the ability to break tackles. He doesn't break tackles like many. At the NFL level, you don't normally see running backs just shrug off an inside linebacker, whether he's a starter or not. That's an 11-yard gain on a 2nd and 23. We all know what's coming next. It's the hook and lateral. It really takes advantage of really any coverage. The 49ers are trying to disrupt St. Brown's release. So they are actually bumping him. A cover 2 technique up there. It's possible that you've got a match coverage because here is a nickel defender who's running with Jamison Williams underneath. Laporta, just brilliant stuff. A pseudo pick rub concept on the corner, and then he's going to loop around to go get the boundary side safety that I had talked about somewhat on the previous play. I think the 49ers were trying to vary coverages in the first half. And I tried to illustrate. I showed a Tampa 2. I talked about a cover 3, even though I didn't show that one. And then the robber-esque coverage that they played against trips on the 2nd and 23. You really run the risk of opening yourself up to some of the really patented routes that Ben Johnson and the receivers and tight ends and running backs can execute on the run, on the fly. Meaning, I think there is a level of their typical pass concepts whereby those guys are reading it in combination or cooperation with Goff, and they'll adjust their routes accordingly. I think it's one of the reasons why when we have seen Goff and the passing game struggle, it's been against teams that are a little bit more physical, but in zone. So they'll bump or collision receivers. I'm thinking about Tampa Bay and the regular season loss this year. The Bears on the road and a little bit at home last year in the come from behind win in 2023. Some of those situations when they'll collision receivers and open themselves up possibly to penalties for contact downfield, but play zone out of it, those have, I think, sometimes disrupted the timing. If you're going to allow free releases against Ben Johnson's pass game, it's going to be a tremendous challenge for anyone to deal with. I look for Brian Flores' defense to kind of shapeshift somewhat in this rematch because of what's happened to them the first 3 times that Ben Johnson has gone up against Brian Flores' defense. They've scored, I believe it's 96 points in their 3 games. The 2 wins, the 2 games last year in 2023, and the win in 2024 in Minnesota, where Jared Goff really put on a show. Every time they got into a mug, heavy pressure look, Ben Johnson and Jared Goff had to answer for it. These plays that I selected to show you here, I just enjoy the situational awareness of what Goff and Ben Johnson get accomplished. Whatever their system is for teaching the players their pass concepts, but also installing so many trick plays, anomalous plays, whatever phrase you want to use it, designed concepts. How does Ben Johnson get the time to do all those things? Well, you have to keep a lot of the same players around from year to year so that things you installed 22 months ago in a position group, wide receivers, let's say, are still, you still retained 80% of those guys, so you don't have to reteach new concepts every year. You practice them again, you practice the skills and maybe the adjustments, or talk about the situations when you might use them. So that's a big factor. Retention of players at the high school and college level. Well, the college level is totally different now, but it kind of allows you to install things one year and retain the usage or the effectiveness of that installation a year or perhaps 2 years later. The NFL is not often like that. The Detroit Lions are in a unique situation, I think, in that Ben Johnson stuck around for another year. He may stick around for another year after 2024. Who knows how it works out? I just think it's a very unique offense because he plants seeds or traps early on and then seems to exploit them either later on in the possession, later on in the half, or in the second half. And in some cases, I think he's installing things like now against the 49ers such that the Vikings will see them on film, and then he'll be able to have a real counterpunch ready in that showdown in Week 18. Maybe I haven't gotten my thoughts across perfectly in this video. I'm just challenged personally, oftentimes, to try to encapsulate what they do, why they do it. The only way for me to really attack it is to look at personnel groups and formations, and again, offer to you that it's like a weaving of multiple storylines together, with each individual storyline being a personnel group / formation, which is what I think makes it extremely difficult for me to try to summarize and evaluate, and has to be incredibly frustrating for NFL defensive staffs to try to navigate how to deal with Ben Johnson's offense with what they can execute on a play-by-play basis. Really going from jumbo personnel groups to 2 snaps against the 49ers. They didn't have a running back on the field. I called it 0-1 personnel. No running backs, 1 tight end, and 4 receivers with St. Brown set up in the backfield as a running back. Truly unique offense, in my opinion, at the NFL level. I just don't really see anyone else who runs things the way Ben Johnson does and expects so much of his quarterback, receivers, tight ends, and running backs on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, I should say, in terms of recognizing the route to run, but also being so willing to block for each other. It just shows up on film and looks so drastically different from what we see in other offenses in the NFL, at least for me. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study look at their early offense against the San Francisco 49ers, along with a look forward and then back towards the second possession in terms of that wide-ass split that Taylor Decker took from Graham Glasgow at least 3 times in the game. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this video, please consider grabbing a link to it, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.